If I had known the truth about my family, I wouldn't have opened the letter. But I did. And what I found inside didn't just crack my world, it detonated it. I found out I was adopted on a Wednesday. Not a dramatic thunderstorm Wednesday or a weepy sunset kind of day. Just a plain gray sky middle of the week when you expect nothing more than emails, errands, and maybe forgetting to defrost chicken. But life doesn't wait for you to get comfortable. It shoves truth down your throat when you're least ready to swallow. It started with a letter. An actual physical letter. No return address, no sender. Just my name handwritten in a familiar, unsettling script. The kind of handwriting you don't remember until it's staring back at you like a ghost you once forgot. I was standing in my kitchen, the same one where I used to watch my mom, the woman who raised me, the woman I buried 4 years ago, humming and making coffee in her robe. I opened the envelope with a butter knife because life has a sense of humor like that. Inside was one page. No greeting. No explanation. Just a photocopy of a birth certificate. My birth certificate. Except the parents' names were not John and Diana Whitaker, the couple who raised me in our yellow house on Maple Lane with Saturday pancakes and forced family game nights. The mother's name was someone I didn't recognize. Margaret Connors. The father's line was left blank. I stared at that blank line longer than I should have. Like maybe if I just waited, a name would appear. Maybe it was a misprint. Maybe someone was playing a sick joke. But deep down I knew. I felt it like a tremor under my skin. Something in me broke. Not with noise but with silence. The kind of silence that fills your bones and makes you question every damn thing you thought was solid. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I made tea. That's what I do. I make tea when I don't know what else to do. And as I poured hot water into my favorite chipped mug, my hands trembling just enough to spill a few drops, I said it out loud to no one. They lied to me. The next thought was less calm. And someone is going to pay for it. I didn't sleep that night. I just laid there in the dark, replaying every memory from my childhood like a montage I suddenly didn't trust. Every bedtime story. Every scraped knee band-aid. Every Christmas morning. Every time my dad kissed my forehead and told me I was just like my mother. Which one? Diana Whitaker, the woman I buried, mourned, and tried so hard to emulate, or Margaret Connors, a name that now sat in my brain like a stone? The next morning I opened the box. The one I keep at the top of my closet, full of my mom's old journals and cards. I told myself I was just looking for handwriting samples. But really I was looking for her. Anything to make sense of what I just learned. The box smelled faintly like her perfume. Lavender and some old-school drugstore brand she always called her signature. It made my chest tighten. I flipped through the contents quickly at first, then slower. Old birthday cards. Grocery lists. A to-do list that included get dog food. And renew car tags like she had any idea she wouldn't live to cross those off. But there was nothing about Margaret Connors. Nothing about adoption. Nothing that said, oh, by the way, your entire identity is a fiction we carefully curated for your benefit. Not one word of warning. Not one clue. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask her why. Why she never told me. Why she let me believe that John Whitaker, the man who taught me to ride a bike and then quietly disowned me when I chose not to move back home after college, was my biological father. Why the lies? Why now? But I couldn't ask her. Because she was ashes in an urn on a shelf in my hallway. I took a long shaking breath and did the one thing I'd never done before. I Googled my own name. Lucy Whitaker. 33. Seattle. CFO. Recently divorced. And adopted, apparently. Nothing came up. So I tried the name Margaret Connors. Few hits. A nursing assistant in Spokane. A missing persons report. 1989. No updates. And one link to a public record for a birth in Oregon in 1991. That was my year. My birthday. My hospital. I clicked. There it was. My name. My birth date. Born to Margaret Connors. No mention of an adoption. No legal record of a transfer to the Whitakers. It was like I had just been taken and folded into someone else's life. And in that moment I knew. This wasn't just a family secret. This was a cover-up. And if they thought I was going to leave it alone, oh honey, they really didn't know me at all. I drove to his house on a Sunday. It wasn't planned. I didn't pack an overnight bag, didn't call ahead, didn't even brush my hair properly. I just grabbed my keys, threw on a hoodie, and drove 3.5 hours east, the way you do when adrenaline replaces logic. John Whitaker lived in Yakima now. Retired. Remarried. Subscribed to an HOA newsletter and golfed on Wednesdays, the full suburban redemption arc. I hadn't seen him since my mom's funeral, where he didn't cry. Not even once. He answered the door in cargo shorts and a smug little life is good t-shirt. I stared at him for a full beat before I spoke. "Hi, Dad." His face froze. Like he saw a ghost. "Lucy, this is a surprise." "Yeah, I'm good at those," I said flatly. "Got a minute?" He stepped aside. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and emotional avoidance. His new wife wasn't home, thank God. And I wasn't in the mood for polite small talk over gluten-free muffins. We sat at the kitchen table. The same model I grew up with, different location. He offered me coffee. I declined. Then I took out the letter. I slid it across the table, slow and quiet like it was a weapon. And in a way it was. He looked down, squinted, and paled. "That's not. Don't." I cut him off, voice sharp enough to draw blood. "Don't start with denial. It's a copy of my birth certificate. From Oregon. With a different mother. And no father listed. So unless there's a twin sister, I think we can agree, this isn't a typo." He opened his mouth, then closed it. For once in his life, John Whitaker didn't have a ready-made explanation. I leaned in, steady. "So here's what I need from you. The truth. Not a dad-filtered version. Not something wrapped in nostalgia and good intentions. The real version. What happened, who Margaret Connors is, and why I'm just now learning that my entire existence is based on a lie." He stared at me, blinking too fast. Then finally he sighed. "I always knew this day would come," he said softly. "Well, congratulations, John. It's here. And I'm not leaving until I get every last answer." He stared at the letter like it might catch fire if he blinked too long. "Your mom never wanted you to know," he said finally. "Which one?" I snapped. His eyes flicked up to mine. "Good." I wanted him uncomfortable. "I meant Diana," he said. "But yeah, I guess that applies to both." He leaned back in his chair, running a hand down his face. The kind of gesture a man uses when he's building up to a confession, hoping exhaustion makes it feel more human. "She couldn't have children," he began. "We tried for years. IVF. Surgeries. Pills. Nothing worked. Then in 1991 we got a call from an old friend of hers. A woman who worked as a nurse in Portland." I leaned in. "Margaret Connors." He nodded. "Yes." She was troubled. Diana hadn't seen her in years, but she called out of nowhere. Said she'd had a baby. Said she couldn't keep her. No father listed, no family support. She was scared. Alone. She didn't want the state to get involved. "So you just took me?" "She offered you to us." Diana said it was fate. That it was meant to be. She knew we'd never pass a proper adoption screening. We weren't exactly young, and our finances were tight back then. So we paid her under the table. That hit like a brick. "You didn't follow the rules. You made a deal over my life." His face twisted. "We raised you. Loved you. Gave you everything we could." I laughed, one short cold note. "Yeah, but you never gave me the truth, did you?" He swallowed hard. "Margaret disappeared a few weeks after that. Quit her job. Left no trace. Diana tried to find her for years secretly. She wanted to make sure you were okay. That she didn't change her mind. But Margaret was gone. Like she vanished off the planet." "So what? You figured if she was gone, the lie could just live forever?" "We didn't lie," he said quietly. "We just let the truth stay buried. That's no different at all." I stood, my chair scraping loud against the tile. My hands were shaking. Not with sadness, with fury. Controlled, bitter fury. "You know what's funny?" I said, grabbing the birth certificate from the table. "All those times you told me I had Diana's smile. Her stubborn streak. Her eyes. You do." I held the paper up. "Not according to this." And I walked out before he could answer. Because I didn't come for comfort. I came for the truth. And now I was going to find out what happened to Margaret Connors, and why she disappeared right after giving me away. I didn't drive straight home after I left his house. I sat in a gas station parking lot for over an hour. The engine idling, hands gripping the wheel like it was the only thing keeping me tethered to the earth. I stared through the windshield at nothing, at everything, at my own reflection, and I didn't recognize her. So I started Googling. Margaret Connors. Portland. 1991. Nursing assistant. Missing. Most of the results were junk, genealogy threads, old social media with inactive profiles, people with the same name but the wrong face, wrong timeline, wrong everything. But one link caught my eye. A message board for cold adoptions, what they call unregulated, off-the-books infant transfers that happen outside the legal system. You know, the ones nobody likes to talk about. I clicked, scrolled, and there she was. Margaret Connors. Last seen July 1991. Age 26. Brown hair, hazel eyes. Worked nights at a hospital in Portland. Quit suddenly without notice. Left her apartment still furnished. Half a paycheck uncashed. The thread was 8 years old. Buried deep. Most of the comments were dead ends or conspiracy theories. Except one. Posted by a user named RedCascade87 6 years ago. If anyone has info on Margaret Connors or a baby born June 91 in Portland, please DM. Family still searching. We believe there was a private adoption. My birthday is June 14, 1991. My hand started shaking so hard I dropped the phone. I picked it up, logged into a burner Reddit account I hadn't touched since my ex-husband's affair, long story, and messaged the user. I have reason to believe I might be the baby you're talking about. They responded 4 hours later. We should talk. Margaret was my aunt. And just like that, everything shifted. Because I wasn't just a girl with a missing mother anymore. I was the missing piece in someone else's story. We met in a little diner off I-84, one of those places where everything smells like fryer oil and nostalgia. It was halfway between Portland and Seattle, neutral territory. I chose a booth near the window, heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to warn me. He walked in wearing a faded hoodie and jeans, the kind of guy who could be anyone. But when our eyes met, I knew. Not in a romantic way. In a cellular way. His name was Ethan. My mom was Margaret's sister, he said after we ordered coffee. She died a few years ago. But before she passed, she told me Margaret had a baby, and that the baby was gone. Gone? I echoed. He nodded. Disappeared. Margaret wouldn't talk about it. She got more paranoid every year. Moved around a lot. Then one day she just vanished. No goodbye. No note. Just gone. I told him about the letter. The birth certificate. The informal adoption arranged in secrecy. I watched his jaw tighten. My mom always thought something was off, he said. She said Margaret didn't want to give up the baby. That someone pressured her. But nobody listened. Who would have pressured her? I asked. Ethan looked me dead in the eye. Maybe the people who raised you. I froze. I don't want to believe it, he said more gently. But Margaret called once. I was 13. I picked up the phone. All she said was, they lied to her. I didn't want to give her up. Then she hung up. That was the last time anyone heard from her. I stared at him, the coffee growing cold between us. She was trying to get me back. Maybe. Or maybe she knew something she wasn't supposed to. And they made sure she stayed quiet. That hit me like a slap. Because for the first time I realized this might not just be about adoption. This could be something darker. Something people wanted to stay buried. And suddenly I wasn't just a woman seeking answers. I was a threat to the people who built their lives on a lie. I went back to Yakima. This time I didn't knock. I let myself in with the emergency key he still kept in the fake rock under the porch. The same one I'd used in high school to sneak him past curfew. Full circle, I guess. He was in the den, watching golf, living his quiet lie like nothing had happened. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised. He looked tired. I thought you got what you came for, he said. I stepped into the room, closed the door behind me. No. I got what you were willing to give me. I'm here for what you didn't. He muted the TV and sat back. You've got questions. No, I said, voice low. I've got evidence. I told him about Ethan. About Margaret's last phone call. About the message that she never wanted to give me up. His expression didn't change, but his hands gripped the arms of his recliner just a little tighter. She called someone, I said. Someone who made her disappear. So tell me, John, who the hell did you call when you took me? Silence. Then finally he spoke. There was a man. A lawyer. Quiet. Handled adoptions for couples who couldn't go the legal route. No questions asked. Name. I demanded. I don't remember. He lied. I stepped forward, slow and deliberate. You do remember. Because you were willing to pay him. Which means you trusted him. Which means he still has power. Maybe over you. Maybe over all of this. He sighed and reached into a drawer. Pulled out an old dusty address book. Flipped through it like he was turning pages in a confession. Richard Brantley, he said at last. Portland. He ran something out of a private firm downtown. Discreet adoptions. No paper trails. Diana handled it. I just signed what she told me to. I took a photo of the name and address. You know what I think? I said, turning to go. I think Diana didn't handle anything. I think she made a deal that Margaret didn't fully agree to. And when Margaret pushed back, she disappeared. He didn't respond. Because deep down, he thought it too. Richard Brantley looked exactly like the kind of man who would make women disappear with a signature and a shrug. His office was in a converted Victorian home in Portland's West Hills, the kind of place that screams prestige and old money while quietly laundering shame behind silk drapes. The plaque on the gate said Brantley and Associates, Estate Law and Family Services. Subtle. Sanitized. Rotten. I walked in unannounced. The receptionist blinked when I gave my name. Do you have an appointment? No, I said, smiling coldly. But tell Mr. Brantley that Lucy Whittaker is here. Or maybe he'd know me better as Margaret Connor's baby. Silence. She buzzed the intercom. Mr. Brantley, someone's here to see you. She says it's about a Margaret Connors. A pause. Then. Send her in. The man himself was in his 70s, hair silver and combed back, crisp navy suit, gold pen resting precisely next to a closed leather folder. His office smelled like expensive leather and buried secrets. He didn't stand, didn't offer a handshake, just looked me over like I was something uninvited crawling out of the past. Well, he said. This day took longer to arrive than I expected. I sat across from him without waiting for permission. You arranged an illegal adoption, I said. You facilitated a transaction that erased a woman's rights and altered a child's life. I facilitated a solution, he corrected, calm as ice. Margaret was unstable. Emotional. The Whittakers were financially stable, married, educated. The baby was better off. You mean I was more convenient to sell? I snapped. He leaned back unbothered. She signed the papers. She disappeared. People do. I slammed a photo of Margaret on his desk. She was scared. She tried to contact her family. Then she was gone. And you're telling me that's a coincidence? He stared at the photo for a long beat. Then said almost softly, Margaret came back here. Months later. Said she changed her mind. Wanted to fight for you. I advised her against it. Advised? I asked, disgust rising. She was broke. Unwell. And yes, I called Diana. Told her the mother might try to reclaim custody. Diana said she'd take care of it. The next day Margaret was gone. I never saw her again. My chest tightened. You knew, I whispered. You knew something happened to her. He didn't deny it. Didn't confirm it either. Just smiled, and that smile? It chilled me more than any threat ever could. Some truths, he said, are too expensive to chase. I stood slowly. I'm not afraid of the price. He chuckled. Then you're braver than the woman who came before you. I walked out. And for the first time I knew the revenge I needed wouldn't be loud. It would be surgical, legal, public. And it would burn down everything he built with his precious little folder of secrets. I didn't sleep for 2 nights. Not because I was afraid that phase was over. Fear had been replaced by something colder, sharper, something I could wield like a blade. I took leave from work, packed up my apartment, and started living out of hotel rooms, coffee shops, and courthouse records offices like a one-woman justice department. Step 1: Documents. I filed a formal request for Oregon birth and adoption records. It took digging, a forged signature from Ethan posing as Margaret's next of kin, and a clerk with a soft spot for long-lost family reunions. What came back wasn't shocking, but it was nauseating. There were no formal adoption papers, no court approval, no sealed file, just a single affidavit, notarized and stamped with Brantley's firm name, listing temporary guardianship for health and relocation purposes. Dated 3 days after my birth, which meant they never adopted me. They took me in without any legal process. It was wrong no matter how they framed it. Step 2: Money Trail. Ethan and I combed through old tax records from the Whitakers. 1991. A sudden unexplained deposit for $17,500. The same year Diana left her job at the school district and bought that damn yellow house. Step 3: The story. We crafted a timeline. Margaret's pregnancy. Her connection to Diana. The phone call Ethan remembered. Her attempt to get me back. Brantley's warning. Her disappearance. All of it: pattern, motive, opportunity. And the best part? Brantley's arrogance. The way he admitted to advising Margaret. That line. Some truths are too expensive to chase. I'd recorded the entire conversation on my phone, and that smug bastard never even noticed. By the end of the week, I had a manila folder thicker than most startup business plans. Names, bank statements, handwritten notes from Diana I'd found in an old journal, ones that didn't match her normal tone, panicked and fragmented. She had known. She had done something. And now I had proof. But I wasn't going to the police. No, that would come later. First, I needed to set the stage. Because the kind of revenge I wanted, it needed an audience. I walked into The Current, a sleek local media house known for its deep-dive investigative series, like I was pitching a screenplay. The receptionist asked if I had an appointment. No, I said. But I have the story of an illegally adopted child, a missing mother, a now-retired power lawyer who arranged secret baby transfers, and a recording that'll make your legal team perk up like they just drank 4 Red Bulls. That got me an editor in 5 minutes. His name was Jonah. Late 30s. Caffeine eyes. Notebook already open. I gave him the short version: Margaret Connors, the private adoption, the vanishing act, Brantley's confession, the Whitakers, and how I had the paper trail, timeline, and receipts. I showed him the documents, played the recording. By the end, he was gripping the table. "This is huge," he said. "And dangerous. You sure you want this public?" "No," I said. "But she deserves it. Margaret deserves it. And if someone made her disappear to protect a reputation or a paycheck, I want them to know the world is watching now." He agreed to take it. The feature would run in 3 weeks. But first we had to fact-check every detail. Secure legal review. Prep for blowback. In the meantime, I went home. Not to my apartment, that was gone, but to Ethan's. He cleared out his guest room and stocked the fridge with sparkling water and ice cream like we were on the run and on vacation at the same time. We worked late into the night. He scanned old photos of Margaret, digitized letters, sent off subpoenas to get Brantley's firm audited for prior guardianship arrangements. Every stone we turned over revealed a deeper crack in their pristine suburban lie. And then one morning, a breakthrough. A Jane Doe, unidentified body found in the Willamette River. July 1992. Dressed in a hospital uniform. Dental records inconclusive. Age mid-20s. CO2 drowning. Ruled accidental. Ethan was pale. She wore that uniform. Navy scrubs, white sneakers. We submitted a DNA request. If the match came back positive, it wouldn't just confirm her death. It would confirm they silenced her. But until then, I had a headline about to break. And a man named Richard Brantley with no idea that his tidy world was about to be blasted open. The article dropped on a Thursday. Front page of The Current's online feature with the headline: "The Baby They Buried. A Secret Adoption, a Vanished Mother, and the Lawyer Who Made It All Disappear." Underneath that was my face. Not glamorized. Not softened. Just me, staring into the camera like I'd already buried the past and was now daring it to rise. Within 3 hours, my inbox exploded. Journalists. Activists. Women from the 80s and 90s sharing eerily similar stories. A retired social worker who said she remembered Margaret. And, perhaps most disturbingly, 2 more adults who believed they might have also been informally placed through Brantley's network. Brantley's firm released a statement calling the article a distorted narrative built on speculation and emotion. So I uploaded the recording. Every word. Uncut. No background music. Just his calm, cold voice talking about how Margaret came back. How he advised her to let me go. How she vanished. The comment section turned into a war zone. People weren't just angry. They were furious. Women who had given up children under pressure. Children who'd always felt out of place. A mother whose sister had also gone missing after a private custody arrangement in the early 90s. This wasn't an isolated case. This was a pattern. And Brantley? He went silent. His office was shuttered within 48 hours. On indefinite hiatus, the sign read. Translation. Lawyered up and scared. As for John Whitaker, he emailed me a single sentence. I didn't know it would come to this. I didn't reply. Because I wasn't done yet. 2 days after the article went live, I got the call from the medical examiner's office. The DNA matched. The Jane Doe from the river was Margaret Connors. My mother. She hadn't vanished. She had drowned, right after trying to get me back. Ruled accidental. But now? Now there was cause to reopen the investigation. Because now the world was watching. And I had turned my pain into a public reckoning. The cemetery was quiet. Not the kind of performative quiet you get at funerals where people try too hard, but the kind that settles in when no one's left to impress. We buried Margaret Connors beneath a small oak tree, the roots curling over earth that had waited 3 decades for her name. The stone was modest, no flourishes. Margaret Connors, 1965 to 1992. She didn't vanish. They just stopped looking. Ethan stood beside me. A couple distant relatives of hers. A few quiet faces from the advocacy group that helped expose Brantley's fraudulent adoptions. There were no pastors. No organ music. Just the sound of wind and justice, slow, long delayed, but here. I held the urn myself as we lowered it into the ground. Not a job for strangers. Not for funeral staff. This wasn't symbolic. It was restoration. I had buried Diana 4 years earlier. Stage 4 ovarian cancer. She never told me about the diagnosis until it was too late to do anything. Typical Diana. Always in control of the narrative, even when it meant writing her own ending in the dark. I remember how clinical her funeral felt. Crisp. Cold. Well attended by people who had no idea who she really was, or what she'd hidden. No mention of Margaret. No mention of me not being hers by blood. Just a slideshow of a perfect family that never existed. I had mourned her. Then I found out the truth. Today was different. Margaret never got the years. She never got the Mother's Day cards, the homemade mac and cheese nights, the voice on the other end of my phone when I thought I was falling apart. But she tried. She came back for me. And for that, I owed her more than memory. I owed her her name. After the service, Ethan and I stayed behind. Everyone else faded away respectfully. I keep thinking, I said quietly, that Diana would have hated this. She doesn't get to have an opinion anymore, Ethan replied. This isn't hers. No, it wasn't. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel caught between two mothers. One was gone, and the other had finally come home. I brushed some dirt from the top of the stone and whispered, I found you, Mom. You weren't erased. Then I left the cemetery with my back straight, not burdened by grief, but held up by truth. The blank space on my birth certificate had haunted me since the moment I first saw it. No father listed. No name. No clue. Just empty space where a man's signature should have been. For weeks, I tried to convince myself it didn't matter. I'd survived enough betrayals for one lifetime. But that empty line, it pulled at me. Like an unfinished sentence I couldn't stop reading. Ethan found the first thread. A nurse at the hospital where Margaret worked in 1991 remembered a man who visited her regularly during her last trimester. Tall, dark hair, looked older than her. He drove a silver El Camino and always brought her peach Snapple. Not much, but enough. I spent the next week buried in archived employee records, yearbooks, city directories, anything that might connect Margaret to someone with that description. Then I found a note. A scribbled name in the margin of an old journal Diana had kept during the summer of 91. Ask him again about our Lansing. If he's going to disappear, she should at least get support. Lansing. hit like a punch. I searched court databases, city records, DMV filings, and there he was. Robert Lansing, age 68. Former paramedic. Still living in Oregon. No criminal record. No spouse. One speeding ticket from 2004. No children listed. Or so he thought. I didn't call. I drove. Pulled into his driveway like I was delivering fate. The house was small, red brick, clean lawn. He answered the door wearing old jeans and a faded polo, blinking like he thought I was a lost Girl Scout. Then he saw my face. And I saw the recognition hit him like lightning. "Margaret," he whispered. "No," I said softly. "Lucy." He staggered back a step, hand gripping the doorframe. "I think I'm your daughter." He didn't speak. Not at first. Just stared. Like his past had finally come home. And it looked exactly like the woman he once walked away from. He invited me in without a word. The living room was sparse, but lived-in old recliner, muted TV, the faint scent of tobacco and lemon polish. I stood while he sat, like the weight of my presence had already knocked the wind out of him. "I knew this day might come," he said after a long silence. "That's funny," I said, arms crossed. "You sure didn't leave a trail." He nodded slowly. "That was the point." I dropped into the chair across from him, not because I was tired, but because my legs were shaking and I refused to let him see. "Why didn't you sign the certificate?" I asked. "Why did Margaret raise me alone? And why did she give me up while you just vanished?" He sighed. Not the dramatic, manipulative kind, the kind that sounds like someone trying to unspool 30 years of shame into a single breath. "I was married," he said. "Not to Margaret. To someone else. She didn't know about Margaret at first. And when she found out," he shook his head. "She threatened to ruin us both. Said if I so much as acknowledged the baby, she'd tell the board at the hospital everything." "Nice," I said, voice flat. "So your decision was to disappear and let Margaret handle it alone?" "I offered money," he said weakly. "Money," I repeated, almost laughing. "You offered money while she gave birth alone and tried to raise me in secret. Then she tried to get me back and wound up dead in a river." That part stopped him cold. "I didn't know that," he whispered. "I swear to you I didn't know she died." "She didn't die," I said. "She was erased." He covered his face with both hands. Not performative, just hollow. "I was a coward," he admitted. "And you deserved better than that." There it was. Not love. Not fatherly warmth. Just truth. Cold and overdue, but truth nonetheless. I didn't hug him. Didn't cry. I just stood. "You'll never be my dad," I said. "But now you can live the rest of your life knowing what you missed." He nodded. "I'm sorry. You're 30 years late," I said. "But thanks for finally showing up." I left without looking back. Because closure doesn't always come with healing. Sometimes it's just the door clicking shut behind you for good. 6 months later, I bought a little house in Astoria. Blue trim, white porch, overgrown garden with wild rosemary and lavender pushing through the cracks. The kind of place where nothing felt borrowed. Where every decision was mine, even if it didn't make sense to anyone else. I planted a tree for Margaret in the backyard. A red maple. She never got a yard. Never got to raise me. Never got to read bedtime stories or leave passive-aggressive sticky notes on the fridge. So I gave her roots. I gave her space. Her headstone still stands in Portland, but this is where she lives now, in silence, in shade. In the steady rustle of a life finally lived on her terms. Ethan visits often. Not because we owe each other, but because some people walk through hell with you and stay close afterward. Not as trauma bonds, but as reminders that healing is possible. He brings tea. I cook. We talk about Margaret like she was always here. We talk about my future like it's wide open because for the first time it is. Brantley's still awaiting trial. His empire of secrets turned to dust the minute the recordings hit the press. More families have come forward. More truth is surfacing. And his name, once synonymous with influence, is now a cautionary tale. As for Robert Lansing, I haven't seen him since that day. He sent a letter once. Handwritten. Said he'd like to know me better. I never opened it. Some doors stay closed for good reason. Diana Whitaker's name appears in no public records related to the case. She's listed only in footnotes, guardian of record, spouse of primary custodian. But I know the truth. And now so does the world. Every morning, I open the windows in my house by the coast. I drink coffee with too much cinnamon. I listen to the sea. And I live. Not as someone's secret. Not as someone's mistake. But as Margaret Connor's daughter. Because I wasn't born into a lie. I was stolen from the truth. And I took it back.